I think it's really important for you to be very critical of your hunting and your habitat, your deer habitat, and really grade yourself. Look at it realistically, how good of a job you did. And a lot of your deer habitat, I want this to be very clear. The success or failure of your deer habitat directly relates to the success of your hunting season. If you're planting really pretty food plots and switchgrass plantings and you're making cool bedding areas, but you have a terrible hunt, then you failed in all of those. So it's great now at the end of the season to grade your deer habitat and how you did. And we talked about grading your hunt earlier in the year, but I think it's really important to look at some of these features, and this will tell you where you have some holes in your land. And I want you to look at it as a scale of 1 to 10. And first off, we'll just zip through these small game population. Right now on our property here, we have pheasant, grouse, and rabbits. The grouse and rabbits, or the grouse and pheasant, we have them, and that's great because we really didn't, grouse we might have had. I didn't see any when we first came here 3 years ago, but we do have them. And then pheasants we're starting to see more of. We've seen a couple roosters, a hen. A friend of mine, Colin, who turkey hunts on the land, he heard 5 different roosters in the spring. So that was really cool. We're seeing that. I'm happy overall with our small game. Turkeys, we had a flock of 17 I saw the other day, 9 another time. We haven't had turkeys hanging around during the winter. This is the first time that we've had it in the last 3 winters. So really cool to see that. And even the turkey population, that's a product of grassland meeting hardwood regeneration, meeting hardwoods. You have to have that for nesting. And so you can look up online nesting, turkey nesting. Obviously out in the open hardwoods, they're going to get picked off. Open grassland, they like upland, but they like where that upland cover meets the woods. And so really that briars, hardwood regeneration mix, grass to woods, that's that perfect spot for nesting and protecting those poults so that you can actually have an increase in numbers, and we're seeing that. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to say we still have work to do because I want to see the pheasant and the grouse numbers go up, and I'm waiting for those turkey numbers to go up even a little bit more. So I'm going to say an 8 out of that. I'm pretty happy with the small game that I'm seeing personally, but I still think we have ways to go. Now, obviously too, you're not going to have pheasant in the UP of Michigan in a big wilderness setting, or the hardwoods of Pennsylvania or Kentucky. So you have to keep that in mind, but I'm talking overall, your potential on the property. High timber value, this is interesting. The higher the timber value, the lower the score you can give yourself. Because if you have higher timber value, that means you don't have much wildlife potential. Wildlife in general, whitetails, creatures of edge, wildlife needs diversity. So you need a mix of conifers, hardwood regeneration, woody shrubs, briars, grasses, weeds. You need it all. You need all 4 of those components. So if you're lacking in any one area, it can hurt you a little bit in your potential. I can say for me personally here, we have pretty low timber value. We have a really good mix. There isn't enough for harvest right now, so I'd say that's a better thing than not. But we do have marketable trees that will be available in probably 10 to 15 years, 12 years, somewhere around there. We do have conifer in portions of the property. We have red cedar, which I really like, but I'd like to see that spread more throughout the property. I'd like to see some conifer screening along the road, some conifer pockets in our open area that we have for pheasants and rabbits. So we're lacking a little bit in conifer. We have a pretty good mix, but I still have a lot of bedding work to do. And so overall timber value, when I'm looking at, we don't have anything to sell right now, but we do have marketable trees. There's trees that we need to cut. I would say that in my property personally, we're more like a 7 to 8 around in there. So I like the diversity we have. We're pretty fortunate, but it could be better. Lower doe population. If you have high doe numbers all summer and they hang around all fall, it's going to decrease the amount of bucks you have. And a lot of times that's a product of having too much summer food. If you have a lot of summer food, if you have a lot of does right now and you're thinking, boy, we had a lot of does last year, we didn't see a lot of bucks. If you have summer food, that portion of your habitat is the direct culprit of having too many does during the fall. Limit the amount of food you have to very little, maybe on just your hunting plots here and there. but for the most part, the bulk of your food plots, you don't want food during the summer. And then everything else falls in line. If you have a thick cover, that's for fall. You want fall food. You want fall food so that you have bucks there, but you want to limit the number of does. And a lot of times, that lower doe population number comes from having less or no food during the summertime. And that's not a bad thing. You're not going to hurt your deer herd in any way. We're doing a really good job of that here. I'm hoping it doesn't grow. You know, we typically see more antlered bucks over the course of a season than we do does and fawns on the property. So that's a really good telling number. It's not that we have a 1-to-1 ratio, because some of those bucks are coming from a greater distance. Does are homebodies, so you can't go by. And a lot of times, if you're seeing a lot of does, that means someone else is seeing a lot of bucks. And usually those properties, or the 5% club I call them, are few and far between. So if you're seeing a lot of does, rest assured the bucks are somewhere. And you just don't have them. So that's something you can grade your habitat on: your food plot timing, how thick your property is, how much you're leaving alone, but especially the quality of your food going into the fall, and then the relating and complementary cover. I'd say I'm really happy with where we're at there, so I'm going to put a 10, and the only problem with that is we can only go down. It's exciting, right?
That is.
We got a 10. Yeah.
This is a lot like how I score a fish fry, by the way.
Oh, is it? It's a really... That's awesome. Fish fry sounds good actually right now too.
Okay. I'm gonna hankering myself.
Does are easy to target, and if your habitat's laid out wrong and you're spooking deer every time you come on and off the property, you don't have screening getting in and out, then your does are going to be very hard to target. You should be able to go into a certain corner of your property. You know there's a doe and 2 fawns there, and a yearling doe from the year before. You know that those 4 deer are coming out in this corner all the time, because that's what does do. They bed close to the food, they come in. So if you have that definition of movement, then not only is it easy to target those does if you want to take them out or need to because you have a surplus, then at the same time bucks relate to that movement too, and you can have all these little micro movements on your property. Good doe movement that's reliable and easy to target is the sign of great habitat. Here we have really good doe movement on the property. I still think we have work to do because of some of our bedding areas. I'd like to see our hunting plots offer a little bit more during the hunting season, so we're making some changes there. I say we have some work to do there, but I'm pretty happy with that. I'd say we're at 8 here on the property. 100-yard rule. This is an interesting one. Dylan brought this up when I was making this list, and we look at it like if you can see through your property 100 yards, then pretty bad property. It needs to be a lot thicker than that. I would say Dylan typically 50 yards, 40 yards. Like when you're down in the bedding area today, down the bottom, if you're down there, now it's hard because you have so much snow right now, but even then, if there's a deer standing 50 yards away and we were on level with it, we'd have a hard time seeing it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you want it to be more in that 40, 50 yard mix, even during the winter time right now. And the winter time is the ultimate test. And so this is a really good time to get out and look at that. Overall though, I have some really good bedding areas. We have some great edge, but we have some really big central areas that need a lot of work. And so I'm going to grade myself about a 5 on this. We have some good areas. We have some great edge. We have 13, 14 acres of switchgrass. We have some mixed upland here and there. I've already cut some, but I have a lot more work to do, and so I'm going to give myself a 5 on there. Not to mention, I'd like to add some conifer, and conifer helps break that up and offer diversity in the woods and offer that screening too. So I'm going to give myself a 5 there, unfortunately. How often you spook deer? Think back to the hunting season. When you're going in and out of your stands, are you spooking deer? I mean, really look at it. If you're spooking deer 100% of the time, give yourself a 1 for this. If you're spooking deer 10% of the time, give yourself a 90 for this. And I'm going to say that we're spooking deer, and I'm talking about where it matters. I'm talking about 200 yards from the stand. I'm not talking about something random out where you park your car or truck, but something that actually affects the quality of your land and hunt. A lot of that, again, has to do with screening and especially the layout of your habitat. A lot of people are putting food plots in locations that really set themselves up for spooking deer, or a bedding area they have to walk by or through. A bedding area where deer can smell them, hear them, or see them when they're going in and out during daylight hours, and let alone those food sources. So really that has a lot to do with the layout of your property. And I'm looking at like, we don't spook deer a lot going in and out. Overall, I would give myself, we still have some switchgrass to grow. Our screening was too thin and tall last year. We have our own screening blend that we'll be using that's very thick this year. So I'm gonna give myself an 8 there. And that we do pretty good here. But again, be pretty hard on yourself. This is my property. I should score high. This is what I do for a living, and I've been doing it for 3 years now on this property. So that's what I'm looking at is, really comparing it to what I can do. I follow the deer chores myself. We try to get as much work as we can done. You wouldn't believe how much work it takes on our property here. Really, it takes an awful amount of work, and Jen helps out greatly. Dante helps out, and we still get to the end of the season wishing we'd done more. We get an awful lot done. Have you added water where you need to and where you can? Meaning deer that are moving dry between bedding areas, dry movements between bedding areas and food sources. And at the same time, do you have water where it shouldn't be, like a big food plot? Out of the way areas that you can't bow hunt over. If you have a water hole and you can't bow hunt over, or it's a sin. That's a really big, that's almost an automatic fail there. Water holes on big food plots, automatic fail. The deer are already going to that food plot. So think about some of those things. And then if you have water and you've added it, the opportunity is legal in your area, then really look at those factors. I'm going to give ourselves a 10. I don't think we can add another water hole on the property, maybe one in one location. Would you say that's about accurate, Dylan?
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, we have one every, 300-400 yards.
Sure, yeah.
So I think we have 8 here, maybe.
Yeah, I would say that's about right. Yeah.
We might be able to add one more somewhere, but I'm having a hard time
Right
thinking.
down below the house here, right?
Yes, we are there. Yep, we're going to add one there. It's a new stand location, new thought on there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say because we need to add one, let's give ourselves a 9.
All right.
Enough food plot acreage. This is a big one to last the season, meaning just enough to make it through the season. If you have a lot of summer food and that's at an expense of the fall, you're failing. You need to have enough food to last for the season, get it through the season, get the deer. And that way you establish a pattern of use on your land about August, September. We plant in August sometime. If you're down south, that might be more like September. But bottom line is, you're establishing the pattern of the use right before the season, and you're carrying that pattern of use throughout the season by not overhunting the plots, not spooking deer, and keeping the cover intact. You're not spooking that cover out. You're not spooking bedding areas. You're allowing these little micro movements to take place. That's defined doe usage. And so if you have that all going for you, and your food is making it through to the end of the hunting season at least, you're doing a great job, because that's really fattening the deer up before the winter time, and offering a lot of food before they go into the winter is sometimes better than during the winter, because they're just really creating energy for the winter time. So when they're eating in January, February, they can survive on browse. They can produce enough energy to make it through. But if they're going into the winter lean, that really hurts them the following year for fawn production, fawn recruitment towards the fall, getting those fawns born healthy, fattening them up fast, and also antler development, lactation rates. So there's a lot of biological principles that hinge on getting them healthy, and that's where your food plots matter. People say, it's just for hunting season. No, that's the best time to have food, because once spring green-up takes place, they have an overabundance of food all the way in through when it starts getting to the weeds drying and dying out and the herbaceous growth gone. And in the north half of the country, that's going to be sometime September, October. So your food has to last. So really be critical on there. We're doing well on that. We're going to be a 10 in that area. Now, browse supply. What's your stem count? Do you have enough regeneration for deer that are bedding on the property? Your food plots are one thing, but then how much browse do you have? Deer need to feed twice during the day in their bedding areas on browse. That means hardwood regeneration, briars, woody shrub tips. You can even throw acorns into the mix, because to them, it's hard to digest. It's similar component, or what it actually contributes to them. So not that acorns are browse, but they act like that as far as how they digest it and what they want. They need a lot more than just that. They need diversity. But you have to have that in their bedding areas. So I look at it like here we have a lot to go on cutting and really getting more cutting. That's why I gave myself on the timber value a 7. We need to actually improve our bedding areas, make sure there's more browse. We have a lot of browse around the edges of our land, so we're doing really well there. It's some of those interior areas, and I feel like we have enough for the deer that are here, but we could use a lot more, and that would create a lot more space for holding mature bucks during the season. And I think we're lacking a little bit in that area, so I'm gonna give myself a 7. And then mock scrape at every stand. We call this a habitat improvement. It's also a hunting improvement, but that's where we put our cameras the whole time. Like Dylan and I out today, if we're putting a stand in that tree right there, this is where the scrape goes. This is where we can put a camera. All 3 of those go together: stand location, scrape, and camera location. They all 3 go together. Mock scrapes are very easy. I have over 50 mock scrape videos, maybe even 60 by now, in my playlist on YouTube, so I urge you to check those out. And those they're really important because it gives you an inventory of what's going on exactly at your stands. You don't need to put a camera at every stand location, maybe every other one or every 3, whatever it is. But then when you want to put one there, you can, and it really gives you the activity. It draws trails down into one. They pay attention to the scrape, not you or a camera nearby when they come in. So there's a lot of benefits to those, and you really don't have any excuse not to put those in. We tie a line between 2 trees. We drop it from there. We use a 7 to 8 foot licking branch then. I won't get into mock scrapes too much other than to go check out our playlist, and they'll give you a lot of information on there, and we're a 10 out of 10 on that. That was actually the first improvements we put on the land back in turkey season. Dylan has footage of me raking it out, and people wonder, why are you wearing your camo? Well, we just turkey hunt in the morning. We're making some scrapes, putting a camera out in the afternoon before we even own the property. So that was our first improvement. So I'm going to add these up real quick, and I'm sure we could have a little pause in there, but
I got it right here. 82.
oh, you do 82.
Yep.
So 82. So that's 82%. So I think a B minus.
Solid B minus.
Solid B minus. Yeah, it's not barely. It's a good B
great.
minus. So we have some work to do, and this is coming from someone that does this all the time, for my living, and we're out there creating B-roll and content that we need to do. But I'm working on the property a lot. I mean, many hours. It's like a second job, and I already have 2 jobs in my first career. So this is what I'm doing sometimes from dark to dark when I'm home here. Even today, Dylan and I are out. We're searching for stand locations, thinking about moving a blind. We're looking at that tree, talking about food plots, what we're going to do different out there in a particular food plot. So even when we're out there working, shooting videos, we're still planning and trying to get things done on the property. And let alone, we brought the saw. We had to clean up trails. That's something that's never ending. We have miles of trails, and trees fall all the time. So lots of work to do. I'm happy with a B minus at this point, but I'd really like to get that into a solid B plus next year. And I think with all the plans we have and following the deer chores every month, we're going to get there. I want you to be very critical with yourself. B minus is acceptable, but we go to a lot of lands, we go to a lot of clients, and Dylan, I mean, we can honestly say that a lot of the client properties, which is why we're there, whether it's spooking deer,
a lot of those guys.
A lot of them. Yeah, it's not a slam on those guys. It's just that if you're doing it the wrong way, we see a lot of people that spend an awful lot of money and time working on their property, and they just beating their head against the wall, and it's not giving them, because they're spooking deer, because they don't have enough food, because they have food at the wrong time, because they don't have everything laid out in their property so they can actually hunt it effectively. There's a lot of reasons. They're not taking advantage of water holes. There's a lot of reasons. Mock scrapes at stand locations. You could just keep going on and on. But there's a consistency. I would say that a lot of properties you go to, client properties, are more in the 20-30% range, if that.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, which is just room for improvement. That makes the day fun because there's a lot to talk about.
And that's what Dylan, I don't know if you do the same, but I talk to my clients all the time about, man, I love your property and you're at a 1 or 2 in your potential. And that means, someone asked me this question a while ago. I believe firmly that we have higher expectations for our clients than our clients even understand or realize.
For sure.
They can't see that because we've seen that potential take shape and take place. They haven't. And so they don't understand how good it can be when they actually attain their potential. I want you guys to attain your potential out there. So really grade yourself hard, be critical. And I hope this is very helpful for you in not only planning for this off season, but for a great and successful upcoming hunt this year. Hey, I'm really excited to introduce to you our Hills and Thermals web class. It's something we worked on all year. We're trying to put lots of facets of scouting, aerial imagery, diagrams on the whiteboard to really teach you how the wind moves through hills and how you should find bedding areas, how it relates to deer movements in general, how that relates to this is a bedding area stand, this is a food source afternoon stand. We really tried to put this together and offer you a complete picture of how to navigate hills and find better success consistently where you hunt.